And when you're willing to descend, and I really mean descend into the core of this discomfort, the root of discomfort, that's the pathway back to freedom and greater results. You kind of go into the depths of it, the dark night of the soul, you might say, and then come out to breakthrough levels that you maybe never before seen.
Hello.
That looks like Leon.
It does look like Leon, and that looks like a hashtag no matter what.
That's it. Good to meet you. Thanks for having me on.
No worries. Thanks for agreeing to be part of this little podcast experiment. Who are you?
It's my pleasure. I'm Sterling Hawkins. I've started a couple of companies. I'm kind of an entrepreneur, but really what I found is it's my job. Maybe job's the wrong word. It's my calling to support others in achieving what it is that they want to achieve in their lives.
Interesting. And how do you go about doing that?
Well, I'm a writer. I had a book published back in June. I do a lot of keynote speaking and a lot of work with executive teams. So most of my impact's coming through companies to the individual. Okay,
cool. And what was the book?
It's called Hunting Discomfort: How to Get Breakthrough Results in Life and Business No Matter What.
Hunting discomfort. Is that got something to do with facing your pain?
It's exactly that. Yeah. And how to do it. And, there's 5 steps. I call it the no matter what system, 5 steps to go through that pain. And having gone through it a lot myself, and candidly being unwilling to face it for a very long time, left me in kind of a down and out rock bottom situation. And it was through that pain that was at least the beginnings of my pathway back.
Would you be willing to share your rock bottom moment?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
you've written a book about it, so yeah, why not?
Yeah. So let's see. So a very long, very dramatic story short, I started my first company with my dad out of my family supermarket right out of college. And we sold it to a group in Silicon Valley where it became part of, think of it like the Apple Pay before Apple Pay.
Okay.
It was a little fingerprint sensor that sat next to the credit card terminal. And after you registered, you would just put your finger down and your credit cards come up, loyalty cards would come up, just like Apple Pay, but no phone. And people would look at this things, and this is early 2000s, and say, wow, this is the future. And customers enrolled, retailers signed up. But most importantly, at least for this story, is investors looked at it. We raised over $550 million US, multi-billion-dollar valuation. And Leon, I know, I'm certain it's just a matter of time until we take this thing public. We all cash in, I buy an island, I crown myself the next Steve Jobs, and, go on to start my next company or whatever it was. And it was, have you seen the movie Wolf of Wall Street?
I have.
It was like a scene out of that movie. It was just nonsense. 700 employees, offices all over the world. And you knew there was a but coming because this is a rock bottom situation. But when the housing market started to collapse, our investment dried up and we didn't have enough organic growth to sustain the size of the company that we'd built. And the entire thing goes bankrupt, $500 million gone. And my identity was so tied up into what that company was, who I thought I was, what success looked like, who my friends were, my girlfriend, my partner, like all these things were so tied into my identity that when the company crashed, so did I. And I end up playing out a sad country song of a story where, I no longer have a job, but eventually I run out of cash. I go from this beautiful downtown San Francisco, Silicon Valley apartment to my parents' house. And even my girlfriend broke up with me. It's like I hit every single beat. And that first night, I'll never forget. Like it was the darkest night of darkest nights for me. I'm looking at my couple suitcases and boxes thinking like, how did I fall so far, so fast? And I really started to look at, like, do I even want to be here anymore? Right? Like I felt a little bit like I had my chance, I blew it, and now I was done. And that night, by the way, I was all hepped up on anti-anxiety medication, anti-depression medicine, and that night, something that my mom had said came back to me. She said, "The way out is through." Have you heard that one before?
I have.
It's a Robert Frost quote, but to me, it's always my mom. And it came back to me that dark night, probably because I was living at her house, and I was like, okay, I've literally got nothing to lose. I'm in 6 figures of debt. I've got nothing. I'm going to put this thing to the test. And so I didn't know how, I didn't know what exactly, but I said, I'm going to do something with this life, with this pain, with this situation that I'm in, and with 3 words that were really just a personal mantra to me at the time. No matter what. And it was the first time in my life that I at least consciously confronted the pain of loss, of regret, the pain of feeling like I'd been exposed, like the inadequate version of myself that I felt like I was. Everybody had seen when this thing came crashing down. And that really was the beginning of facing those things, facing the pain, the embarrassment, the grief. And turns out my mom was right. The way out is through. You've just got to be willing to go through no matter what.
So I will say to you that the entire story you just told me, I've had goosebumps. I understand certain guests that the producers put me with, and you are one of those guests. I always tell people to share their pain. I stand on stages as well.
Yeah.
Tell them that if they don't share their pain, it will consume them.
It's a prison.
And ultimately, it will destroy them. And you just have to keep on walking. There's a famous quote. I've shared this quote so many times, but this is like it was made for the story you just told me. Winston Churchill has a famous quote where he says, "When you find yourself walking through hell, keep walking."
Yeah.
Right. And I guess one of my questions is, how do you inspire people to actually keep walking, or even to start walking when it comes to facing themselves?
Yeah. So it's a good question. And I think the answer to that was something I first had to discover in myself. Like, how do I keep walking? How am I inspired to do anything? Looking at, maybe getting out of this life early, I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? The way out is through, fine, but so what? Like, what now? And like many, I don't know if you ever went through this in some of your speaking, but the thing that scared me most in life wasn't death. It was public speaking. Like, I would rather be in the coffin than giving the eulogy under no uncertain terms. If you were like, Sterling, do you want to die? Do you want to be on a stage? I'd be like, kill me now. I'm out. And it really was fed by this massive failure that I now had on my resume, right? Like, I'm not good enough, and I know I'm not good enough. And I'm afraid that if I'm in front of anybody, an individual or a group up on a stage, that they're going to see me for what I really am and not accept me. And that's the greatest pain that I can possibly imagine. So that was actually the first discomfort that I went after. And it was within a few days of moving into my parents' house. It was relatively quickly. I'm thinking about, okay, no matter what, the way out is through. And my email dings, and it was this conference in Singapore. It was just kind of a junk mail that I'm sure they sent out thousands inviting me to join their conference. And it's like, okay, the way out is through. I hit reply and I said, why don't you have me speak? Best, Sterling. I still have the email. And I don't know, Leon, if it was just because like I had nothing to lose, or, I felt like like everything I cared about, I'd lost, including my own identity. So it was a little bit of a game, like, well, what the heck? And I ended up talking to the conference director, talk him into being the keynote speaker at his conference in Singapore. And it didn't come real to me until they sent me the legal agreement. And at this point, like all the self-doubt kicks in, right? You've got this huge failure on your resume. What are you going to say? Not to mention you're terrified to do it. And at that moment, I did what I suggest everybody do to go through their fear, their pain, whatever it is, which is commit in a way where there's no going back. I call it get a tattoo, not a real tattoo, right? But look for a way to commit that is bigger than your own discomfort. And for me, that was signing the legal agreement. So I signed it immediately and I sent it back. That's the first piece. The second piece is, okay, now I'm committed to go through this discomfort. And, I'm telling you my story, but I think everybody can kind of grab on for themselves and say, okay, here's how this applies to me. I needed help because going through that discomfort, everything in your mind and your body is going to start to say, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. This is crazy. This is dangerous. Stop, turn back. And I didn't call this building a street gang back then, but that's what I call it now. Not because I'm suggesting anybody do anything unlawful, because they really need to be people that are not just like drinking buddies or a bestie or even a personal board of directors. Like these are people that are going to go toe to toe with you, look you in the eye and say, here's what we need to do. And if you didn't do it, why did you not do it? So I called my sister up just kind of intuitively. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. I hadn't researched a decade on these things. I call up my sister. She's Georgetown marketing grad. Didn't have a job at the time. She's in that period right after graduating, sorting out, where do I want to go? Where do I want to apply? What do I want to do for work? And I said, I need help. She knew my life had fallen apart. And I said, listen, I'll give you some of the money they're going to give me to speak in Singapore if you'll help me, or you can come with me. And she goes, you're an idiot, Sterling. I'm going with you. Like, let's do this thing. And we practiced like crazy people. I am not kidding you to say I practiced that presentation hundreds, if not thousands of times. So much so my sister Haviland could probably give that to you verbatim. But I had, kind of answering your question, somebody to support me in that process, to go through the discomfort that could kind of, when I lost track of my abilities and my self-worth, could kind of call me to the table and say, nope, right here you are. We're going to go through it again at 8 a.m. tomorrow. And leading up to that presentation in Singapore, I was having panic attacks. I couldn't sleep. I didn't want to eat. And I think, my work with people and companies, that's what it feels like going through the pain sometime, or leading up to going through the pain, or knowing you need to confront the pain. And, the day finally comes. I'm announced to the stage. And by the way, I'm feeling all the feelings of discomfort, right? My heart's beating out of my chest. I'm hot. I'm red. Like I'm sweating. And I get up there, and it's a good thing that I practiced, because I blacked out. I don't remember what I said. And I get off the stage and I thought I bombed. I'm covering my eyes, trying to get out of there, just hoping that they're not going to ask for the money back. And the conference director, of course, is making a beeline for me. I'm like, oh no, I can't take another failure. Like, just get me out of here before I have to take it in person. And he looks me in the eyes and he goes, Sterling, that's the best talk I've seen in my 17 years of doing this. It's crazy to me. And by the way, to this day, I still don't think he was in the same talk I was in. I think he just wanted to say something nice to me, but he did go on to put me in touch with all of his conference director friends. And it's really, that was the beginning of building myself back. I made the commitment. I had surrounded myself with someone or multiple people to help me go through that pain, go through that discomfort. And it was, we were talking a little bit before about that pain that you're unwilling to confront will be the end of you. It'll sink you. It'll be a jail. Well, when you confront it, that's the pathway to freedom and all the results you're looking for in life. It was for me, and it is for every single person that's been brave enough and courageous enough to do it.
So that's a beautiful story. And I can relate to it. I have a specific question based on what you just shared. And that is, I always tell people to share their pain.
Yeah.
However, from a personal perspective, I do share my pain.
Yeah.
All the time with safe people.
Sure.
Yeah. Tell me if you can relate to this. There's moments where you're in so much pain and it never seems to stop.
Yeah.
It keeps on going.
Yeah.
Like I found myself a couple of days ago saying, when is this going to end? When is this going to end? When is this going to end? Is this going to go on forever? Like I do what I tell people to do, but sometimes I'm like, when's it going to end? Why am I doing it? Like, why, if I'm still in it and I've been in it for so long, why am I still doing it? But I still go. Have you ever had that moment or moments where you're like, what is this ever going to end?
Yeah. Yeah, frequently. Because discomfort, and let's just call it pain for the sake of this discussion, it's so uncomfortable, like just physiologically, biologically, like you just want to leave, right? Like discomfort is not something we like. By definition, it's uncomfortable. But, you know, one of the things I hear most talking about hunting discomfort is people coming up to me saying, Sterling, look at my job, look at my bank account, look at my relationships. I don't need to hunt discomfort. I'm surrounded by it. And my answer is always the same, which means you're not hunting discomfort. You're living with it and probably rationalizing and reasoning to yourself why you have it, right? You're making excuses for why you are uncomfortable. And if that's what you're doing, not you personally, but generally, then that pain will go on to a point where it crescendos probably towards the end of your life when you're looking back on your life with all the regrets. I wish I did this. I wanted to do that. I wish I had the courage to do whatever it is, you know, say that thing to a loved one, start that business, whatever. If you hunt the discomfort, if you turn towards it, open to it, well, then it's going to be over. I can't give you a specific time, but that is the pathway back. And I find that oftentimes people kind of live a life that goes along kind of like small waves in the ocean. It's a little bit better, a little worse, a little better, a little worse, a little better, a little worse. And what it takes is really going into the root of discomfort, seeing where that particular pain or that discomfort started, because you didn't come out of the womb with it, right? They didn't hold me up when I was born. They're like, here's Sterling. He's afraid to speak in public, right? Or here's this person. They're afraid of self-doubt or have a lot of self-doubt. Like babies don't come out of the womb like that. It started somewhere. And when you're willing to descend, and I really mean descend into the core of this discomfort, the root of discomfort, that's the pathway back to freedom and greater results. You kind of go into the depths of it, the dark night of the soul, you might say, and then come out to breakthrough levels that you maybe never before seen. So I think I kind of danced around your question, but did I get to at least something to work with there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I was debating whether to speak my complete truth, and I've decided to speak it.
Good.
I'm going to pretend that no one's going to hear this except me and you, and we'll go from there. That's really how I do it all the time. But yesterday, I had a total meltdown. I was talking to one of my therapists. I have many.
Yeah.
And I just had a complete meltdown. It was like the tears wouldn't stop for like, I would say it felt like 20 minutes. Maybe it was less, but it felt like it was probably like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
To the point where she got a little bit concerned, but I just let it all come out.
Yeah.
Right. And it helped. It definitely helped.
Yeah.
But then on another level, I've had meltdowns many times. I constantly have meltdowns.
Yeah.
And I'm always going back to the point of when is it going to end? Right. And I'm I'm having this conversation with you, this specific conversation for me, but I'm sure there are many people who, maybe some who've read your book, maybe some who've listened to my speeches and listened to other people talking about sharing your pain, who are saying to themselves the same thing. When will this end?
Yeah.
And I know you answered it, but with that information that I just told you, like, when will it end? Sterling, when will it end for me? Please let me know.
Yeah. Well, as somebody that's also gone through meltdowns and still does on a regular basis, let me ask you, between those meltdowns, how is it? Because you said, like, after this outpouring with your therapist, things were better. So does this start a period of things kind of an upswing, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, there is an upswing, but it's interesting because there's an upswing and then there's a downswing.
Yeah.
Like, now it's an upswing because I had that moment. You can't have that type of moment and not feel lighter, because there's trapped pain that has come out.
Yeah.
Right. And I was holding on to it, I remember even yesterday, holding on to it. And then something snapped and it just all came out.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got two things to say about it. One is I think, welcome to being human. It's a mountain without a top, and it ends when you're in the ground. It's like a snake shedding its skin. And each time you have one of those meltdowns or low points, it's an opportunity to shed the beliefs about yourself, others, of the world that are no longer working, or to free yourself from past traumas or pain or discomfort, to take you to that next level, to take that next step up the mountain. So that's one piece. The other piece, and I think this is really important, at least it was for me, because I was, still am to some degree, fairly stoic in the sense of the word, that I didn't experience a lot of emotions, mostly because I didn't want to, right? And it took literally losing everything in my life, ending up at my parents' house, for a tear to come out of my eye. Prior to that, nothing. There was this, I understand it differently now, but at the time it was like, oh, I'm strong. I'm not going to let those emotions get me, right? I'm just going to keep going and keep going and keep going and keep all these things bottled up and pushed down inside of me. And what I found, both from my experience and some research out of, I think it's Norwegian research actually, is that when you're dealing with discomfort like that, you're avoiding it, you're denying it, or what I think is the worst, just surviving it, right? Like, you keep this facade of everything's okay on the top to yourself or to others, and underneath everything's falling apart. You feel like a mess, but you keep that facade going. When I call those the discomfort defaults. When you're deploying those consciously or unconsciously, the research shows that you are unable, not unwilling, but unable to act in accordance with the knowledge that you already have. So just to use myself as an example, when that company fell apart, I knew I needed a job. I knew I needed support. When things got really bad, I knew I needed help from a friend, from a therapist, from somebody. But the discomfort stopped me in my tracks. I just simply didn't acknowledge it. I didn't deal with it until life got so hard, so difficult, it felt like I didn't have a choice. So I think feeling the feelings of discomfort, the pain, the sadness, the anger, the grief, whatever it is a necessary step when you're in those depths, so you can let go of those things that are holding you back, that are maybe trapped in your body, trapped in your mind. When you let go of those things, it lets you see reality of what you might be capable of, who others are, and how the world works in a new way, to take more effective steps forward. So you don't have to end up in that quite the same rock bottom kind of situation again.
What do you say to someone that comes to you and says, I'm at rock bottom, help me?
Well, I would look at why. I think hitting rock bottom, and this might be a little bit controversial, isn't because of the circumstances. And there's a lot of circumstances in the world right now. We've got inflation, we've got a war in Europe, we've got COVID fallout, we've got, all these things happening to all of us that we have little or no control over. And I get that. But at the same time, there's no power in saying, like, self-handicapping, saying, oh, I failed or I hit this rock bottom situation because of somebody else, because of something that I couldn't control. Now, I'm not saying that has nothing to do with it, but I'm just saying it doesn't help you. When you sit back in a rock bottom situation and say, okay, what are my beliefs that I have? And the three things that I think are important, I've said them a couple of times, I'll say them again here, are what beliefs do I have about myself? Who am I? What's my personality? How am I approaching the world? Beliefs about others, others being an individual, others being a group of individuals, like companies, for example, or the world. And sitting back and saying, okay, which of my beliefs, I wouldn't even say wrong, but what else is true in addition to those beliefs? When you change those beliefs at the source, right? You're not trying to effort something. You're not looking at full-on discipline, although I think there's a time and a place for that. But when you change your beliefs, literally how you're looking at the world, it's going to just naturally change the actions that you're going to take. And when you're taking new actions, somewhat obviously, new results are going to arise. You know, one of my favorite examples with this is people that get really disciplined about weight loss and health. And for some period of time, you know, they're going to the gym and they're eating well, and then something happens and all of a sudden they put all the weight back on, or they've lost the progress that they've made. Well, discipline itself is not sustainable. It's just not. It will work for a period of time, but unless you're willing to confront the underlying beliefs you have, in that health example, why you're not going to the gym, why you're eating the way you are, right? Like, what discomfort are you comforting in ways that aren't sustainable? Unless you get to the essence of that, you're going to end up about where you started. And so, you know, this is a very long-winded way of coming back to your question of, if somebody says, well, what do I do? I'd say, let's start looking at your beliefs. Like, what are the beliefs that may have contributed to you getting here? And when did those beliefs start? And getting to that core, you can start to shift them.
And ultimately dealing with all of that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you can't run from it. You know, like, you can't run from yourself. I don't know who said it, but this is this great quote, like, no matter where you go, there you are.
I think it was Austin Powers.
There you go.
Or if it wasn't Austin Powers, he stole it. I once saw a magnet that says, wherever you go, there you are, Austin Powers. But it may not have been him. Maybe someone wiser.
But isn't that the way, though, right? No matter what circumstances change, like, you're the common denominator. And unless you really come to terms with, oh yeah, how am I contributing to this? I'm not saying it's your fault, right? But there's beliefs that you can shift that have something to do with it and can give you better results.
At the beginning, you'd mentioned there were 5 steps that you put people through. What are those steps?
Yeah. Well, the first is kind of the namesake of the book. You hunt discomfort. You look for those beliefs about yourself, others, of the world that aren't serving you. And more accurately, you look for the points in your day, in your life, where you're avoiding discomfort. And it's very sneakily, because we've constructed our lives, and by extension, our businesses, just to not feel discomfort. Why? Because it doesn't feel very good. And I don't know about you and all of your listeners, but for me, that happens from the second I get up in the morning. I'm avoiding the discomfort of getting up. Boom, I hit the snooze button. And then I feel a little tired. And then I go, okay, well, I'm going to have a cup of coffee, right? Boom, more comfort. More discomfort avoided. Then I get to the office somewhere and I'm looking at the stairs, boom, elevator. And you can look at your day through the lens of, okay, am I either avoiding discomfort or am I opening to it, embracing it, taking steps into it? I'm not using those discomfort defaults of surviving, denying, and avoiding. I'm opening myself to all the feelings of discomfort, as uncomfortable as they might be. So that's the first piece. Second piece is what I did when I signed that legal agreement to speak in Singapore. I committed in a way where there was no going back. And I call it get a tattoo, right? Look for a way to make a commitment. I don't care if it's a legal commitment, verbal commitment, financial commitment, but that commitment has got to be bigger than your discomfort. It's got to be something that no matter what happens, it's going to call you through the pain of actually confronting it. And you need, for me, I had my sister, but you need people on your side to help. You need that street gang. You need people that are going to hold you accountable to what you said you wanted to do. And the research is when you're personally accountable, you're 95% more likely to achieve whatever it is you said you wanted to achieve. 95%. Like, it's crazy. Like, if you want to achieve that thing, you want to confront that pain, you want to grow in whatever way you're talking about, well, you better make sure you've got somebody that's holding you personally accountable and willing not just to write off the excuses, right? Like, oh, I was busy. Oh, this happened. Oh, that happened. But is going to look you in the eye and say, okay, well, what are we going to do about that? By the way, as a team, when you're holding each other accountable as a team being your family, team being your community, team being your team at work, whatever it is, you're nearly 4 times as likely to achieve your goal. So it's like the stats are just crazy about these things. And the fourth piece is flip it. This is literally where you use the pain, those proverbial warts, as your pathway forward. And this is kind of the Stoic perspective of the obstacle is the way. And for me, it was when I was going to Singapore, the thing that I was most scared of is people see me as a failure, right? They see me as nervous. They see me as somebody that's lost all this money or been involved with losing all this money. And so my plan was, that's exactly what I was going to say. It's exactly what I talk about on the stage today. The thing that I was most fearful of, scared of, became my pathway. It became the opportunity for what I am doing today. I've got a lot of examples about those things if you want to dive back into it. But before we do, I'll give you the 5th step just to wrap it up, which is surrender. Not in terms of like sit on the couch and watch TV and order pizza, though there's a time and a place for that. I've done that plenty. But surrender in terms of accepting things exactly as they are and exactly as they're not. Carl Jung, arguably the father of modern psychology, said, we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation about who you are, the feelings you're having, not having enough time, not having enough money, not being in the right place, having screwed up something in the past. Condemnation about any of those things does not liberate. It oppresses, and it makes it very hard to do much else. So I think, what you described at your therapist the other day, where you like hit that breaking point where like the emotions come flooding out, like that's the surrender piece where you give in to what is, and you still might not like the situation that you're in, but you accept it. And that's critical for getting yourself out of it.
How does it feel like when you climbed the mountain and you're so happy, and then you realize, oh no, there's another one, and it's the 78th time that's happened to you?
There's been an interesting shift that I took, a belief shift that I realized. I'd love to tell you I had this figured out in advance, but it's been very much an experiential journey for me, which was after I started going after my fears, I realized that, physical discomfort, like, you stub your toe, emotional discomfort, maybe you lost a job or a big deal or broke up with a loved one, physical, mental, emotional, the brain and the body process them almost identically. Research is out of University of Michigan. So much so you can take acetaminophen and it will help you with emotional pain. Now, I'm not a doctor. It's not a biohack. I don't suggest anybody do that. But what I do suggest is we can take the next step, which is if where you meet discomfort is the same anywhere, we grow our capacity to deal with it everywhere. It's a muscle you build. You want to build your biceps, you go to the gym. Well, if you want to build your resiliency, your growth, your breakthrough results, you hunt discomfort. There's just no other way. So what I started doing is like all these adventure things that scared me. I'm not an adventurer. I'm not somebody that's like a thrill seeker and has to get that rush. But I started doing things like jumping out of planes and diving with sharks and running marathons and then ultra marathons and riding bikes across the Rocky Mountains, like all these things. And, I started to bump up against exactly what you're saying, which is when does this stop? Like, I've literally climbed this mountain, and there's another one, and there's another one. And here I am uncomfortable again. And here I am once again confronting those feelings of failure and inadequacy or whatever it was. And it was first my sister, Haviland, who went with me to Singapore. She started, not because I was teaching her, but because she was watching me, she started to take some of these things on herself. And she went from body dysmorphia and an eating disorder that all too many people, especially young women, deal with. She said, Sterling, I will be healthy no matter what. And she went on to become a championship bodybuilder. It's unreal. Like, I look at her Instagram and I go to some of the shows she's in, and it's like, I can't even believe that's my sister, but there she is, right? The epitome of health and physique and all these things. And then somebody I used to work with came over as a refugee from Cambodia. Didn't really have a lot of money, didn't speak the language. He said, I will be a successful entrepreneur no matter what. Again, not because I'm teaching him, but just because he's looking at the things that I'm sharing, the things my sister's doing. He's saying, I want a piece of that. And today, he started a Cambodian beef jerky company, and he's selling more than he can keep up with. And it kind of went on like that, where these people very unintentionally started going after the things that scared them most, that they were most fearful of, and getting to the other side, whatever it was, big or small. And I realized, wait a minute, like, I've been so self-absorbed with the mountains that I'm climbing. This isn't about me. It started to dig myself out of that hole. Like, it started to save myself so I wouldn't be in that situation again. And I realized, I was saying in the beginning, that it's my calling. What I'm here to do is to support others to go through that discomfort, to achieve those big goals, those big dreams, whatever it is that, like, in their heart, they feel like they're meant to do, no matter what's standing in their way. And what's been literally the honor of my life is to see many of them achieve those things that they said they wanted to do. New goals, new health records, new companies, new careers, like all the things you could possibly imagine. I'm watching these people doing it, saying, I don't need to look at all the mountains in front of me. Like, I know they're coming. I know it's a mountain with no top. I know there's going to be valleys, and I'm going to hate it, and I'm going to feel the pain and the grief and the embarrassment and feel like I'm never enough. Like, some of those things may never go away from me, but I don't really need to look at that, because that's not what I'm responsible for. I'm more concerned with supporting others to get through those low points themselves to produce new results. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense. And I would say that ultimately, no matter what, is really saying to yourself, I'm committed to this goal, and I will not stop until I reach it. And that's right. Thank you. Good luck. And God bless you all.
Exactly. With an acknowledgement and a willingness that you're going to have to give up some things, some beliefs about yourself that are maybe core and axiomatic to who you see yourself being. I work a lot with early stage companies and entrepreneurs, especially. They have, I would call it like a superficial no matter what mentality, where they're just going to keep going and going and going and going, and they're not going to stop, but they're not going to change anything about themselves and their beliefs in so doing. And it becomes this rat race where they can never get ahead. They're always kind of in this perpetual, like, I'm just going to keep going. I have to keep going. I will keep going, without the self-reflection, really the surrender necessary to change themselves, to make those breakthrough results more sustainable. So that's a critical piece of it as well.
I'm deeply grateful that we had this opportunity to chat. No one knew what happened to me yesterday except my dog and my therapist.
Yeah.
And my partner, and now you. And the producer had no idea. And it was the perfect person to chat with. And I will say that a lot of the good things that I've done in my life have been because of no matter what. Have been because I burnt my ships, right? As the conquistadors did, right? And sometimes, and I'll tell you another quick last funny thing.
Yeah.
This morning, I did step 2.
Yeah.
I have created a new speech, and I've been wavering on it I've been wavering. And then a guy I work with called me up and said, there are 3 schools that are interested in you giving the speech. They know it's the first time you're giving the speech.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? Just do it. I'm going to have to give the speech for the first time to these kids. And currently the speech is in a pathetic form, but I have no choice now. In my mind started to focus once I said, yes, I don't want to get on that stage, give this speech to these kids and be laughed off stage, which is possible if I don't sort it out soon.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know we're kind of wrapping up here, but just to add a little bit of brain science to what you're talking about, is there's something in our brain called the reticular activation system, the RAS for short. And before we're committed, well, let me tell you what it is first. It's kind of like the bouncer between your unconscious and your conscious mind. It's telling your conscious mind what I need to pay attention to, what I need to look for. It's the reason why if you've ever bought a new car, like you suddenly see that car everywhere, right? You've framed your mind, you've tuned your mind to look for what's important. Now, before you commit, that RAS is probably looking for all the reasons why you can't, you shouldn't, or you won't, right? It's literally looking at this infinite universe around us and saying, here's other reasons why not. But when you make a commitment bigger than that discomfort, you've retuned your brain. This is literally what you did this morning. You've retuned your brain to say, how can I? How will I? And it starts to look for the pathway forward. And it's really incredible. Like, it's uncomfortable to commit, right? To say, oh, I'm going to give this brand new speech in front of these kids. But all of a sudden, you've retuned your brain to see, this is how I can make it work. I will make it work because now I don't have a choice.
Absolutely. That's what I did for my show, The Kindness Diaries.
Beautiful.
I set it all up so that I had no choice but to do it. And I didn't think too much about it until I walked out of the door. And the moment I walked out of the door, I was like, oh my God, have you gone mad? But it was so late. It was too late. I had no choice. That's kind of a hack that I use. But basically, that's step 2 of your 5-step process, which is great.
Beautiful.
So listen, man, it was really a pleasure. Where are you based, by the way?
Denver, Colorado. Somewhat newly. Denver. I've been here 2 years after moving from Los Angeles. Oh,
you were in LA? Because you have an LA vibe. I was hoping you lived in LA because we would definitely connect. I'm in Denver sometimes, but it's lovely. Thank you so much. And I felt comfortable sharing my truth with you, so I shared it with you.
Good. I'm glad. I mean, this has been an incredible conversation. Really appreciate the time and you having me on. And I'll look forward to connecting, if not virtually one of these days. If you're out here, I'm out there. That would be a lot of fun. I'd look forward to it.
Absolutely. Let's do that for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leon.
Bye.
Hello, everyone. It's Leon here, aka The Kindness Guy. If you like my videos, which I hope you do, don't forget to press the subscribe button and also to ring the little bell so that the notifications notify you that I have a new video out in the world.